Hey everyone, my name is Berserked, and this is my Midnight Season 1 UI and add-on guide. I've gotten a ton of requests for this in the comments of my other videos, so I figured it was time to go ahead and make it. Hope you enjoy. So I'm going to break the video up into a few different sections with timestamps, and I'll put all the links and codes in the video's description for easy access. So jumping right in, I'll go over my general UI via WoW's edit mode. I just use WoW's default edit mode, and I've spent a lot of time tweaking it to how I like it. I personally enjoy the default, basic aesthetic of WoW's UI, so I don't use many add-ons that change any of this. That's just a personal preference of mine. But jumping in here, this is kind of my basic default layout. So I have all my action bars, everything centered here, and then I have my tracked buffs right above it. And then I just have my player frame, and then target frame, target of target. Pretty straightforward, everything's very centered. That's just how I prefer to play. I like everything kind of front and center. A couple things that can change is the party frames. So these party frames only pop up when I'm in 5-man groups. If the group is any bigger than 5, it's going to default over to the raid frames here. So if I swap over to Resto or something, I do have a slightly different UI for healing, which I'm happy to make a video on in the future, but this one's going to be more focused on my main DPS profile. But other than that, everything else is pretty straightforward here. I keep the buffs up here because I don't typically look at these buffs too much. These are kind of just like a secondary or maybe even tertiary spot for me to look. I'm primarily watching all my tracked buffs here, and then any debuffs I gain here. And then I just have some kind of additional action bars down here for miscellaneous stuff. But if I close out of the edit mode, you can see that the default is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And that's how it'll look in any of my gameplay videos or kill videos. So jumping back into the edit mode here, a big question I get a lot is about the tracked buffs. So I'll go over these, and I just access it typically through here. It's in the advanced cooldown settings, and it's in the buffs tab here. And this is primarily all I track as enhancement in totemic. The main thing is Surging Totem, followed by Doom Winds, and then I have a couple different ways to track my maelstrom, which I'll go over the other way in just a second. And then I always have a Hot Hands being tracked, or Crash Lightning, and then I also have one for Primordial Storm, and I primarily do that just because if you play Enhancement, you know that after you hit Sundering, you only have a certain amount of time to cast Primordial Storm before it goes away. So I track that here just to make sure I don't miss a window if I'm, casting Sundering and want to wait till ads spawn or for some other kind of burst. And then the last one here is Flame Shock. One other thing I just wanted to mention is that I don't really track either one of my trinkets, mainly because I know that I'm always going to be using my puzzle box with my Surging Totem and Doom Winds, so I don't have much reason to track that because they're always going to be in sync. And then my other trinket that I use is Gaze of the Allenseer, and that one's just like a passive stat trinket, so it's kind of always ebbing and flowing throughout a fight, so I don't really make a point to track that. There are some add-ons out there that improve this Blizzard's default buff tracking, and you can add trinkets to it. Like I said, I don't personally use it, so you'd have to seek that out on your own, but I do know some people do utilize add-ons like that if you're interested. Next, I'm just going to go over real quickly is my boss abilities and my boss warnings. These are super important and really valuable, especially for raid encounters. I personally use Blizzard's just default vertical timeline, and I just have it where I like it. It's just slightly off of my character, so it's kind of always in my peripheral vision here. And I can show an example of some timers and what that kind of looks like. And then the other things here are the text boss warnings. So as you can see here, the critical, medium, and minor, I just also again kind of keep those near my character right above it, kind of in my peripheral vision. So whenever something's coming up, I kind of have an idea. Going more in depth into the boss timelines for boss abilities, I use BigWigs. I would recommend either using BigWigs or DBM. I would probably just sync it up to whatever your raid or raid leader wants you to use. If you're doing like keystones, you don't raid that often, either one is fine. I usually prefer to have BigWigs because you can also have LittleWigs, which is BigWigs counterpart for dungeons, and they're pretty frequently updated. To access BigWigs, you just type /BW. What you want to do when you're in here is you want to go down to the timeline here, and then you want to make sure that this checkbox is checked. So this is enable. You want the Blizzard timeline active. So I'll give an example here of what that looks like, and it's probably gonna do some boss alarms and stuff, so warning headphone users. So this is essentially what it looks like. Is it's just going to show the icons with their countdown timer and then the ability's name. I do have the BigWig timers over here, kind of just over here as like a secondary or even tertiary thing. Like if I ever die in an encounter or I have to help with raid calls, sometimes they can be helpful as well. Moving on to the next section here is going to be for nameplates. I use an add-on called Platynator. Just open this up by typing /PLATY. I use a profile called Blizzard Plus, which you can get from wago.io. I'll put a link to that in the description. And I use that kind of as my base profile and styling. I've done a decent amount of modifying it to my own personal preferences here. So this add-on is really nice. I prefer it over Plater and other stuff like that just because of its like designer feature. Makes everything super easy to use, and you literally just like drag these things around. So you click on them, and then you can move your icons wherever you want stuff. I would recommend this. One of the few tips I have for Platy though, it's under the behavior tab here. What I would recommend doing is it's down here called the on target scale. So essentially what this does is it changes your targeted nameplate to be way bigger or smaller if you would want that. You can change the size of it specifically. So if you see this slider, I'm dragging it. I have it around like 175, 180-ish usually, but I mean, you can go like crazy with it. I would just recommend increasing that on target scale. Secondary to that is called the on cast scale, and this is really valuable in Mythic Plus. So what this does is whenever an enemy, even if you're not targeting it, starts to cast, their nameplate will change size to whatever you designate. So I have my on target scale to 180%, and then the on cast scale to 140%. Whereas these are just the default 100. Everything else is kind of straightforward with abilities and dot tracking. That's what I use over here. This is just all through Platynator, Platy. Is it just cast that here? Like I said, you can modify all that. So I have my debuffs over on the right here, and they start to flash during the pandemic window. You can change the sizes of that. You can customize it however you like. Enhancement Shamans don't have too many like debuffs to track, but if you play something else like an Affliction Warlock or something where you have like a ton of dots, or Shadow Priest, whatever, you could move these dots to anywhere you wanted around your nameplates. Again, super customizable. And then the next add-on to go over is probably the add-on I get questions about the most, which is my Maelstrom tracker. So as you can see here, these blue lightning bolts starting to build up here. This is the default UI. And then once you reach 6 or higher, they start to turn red. And that's thanks to an add-on called Oggystrom. And it's a very simple add-on. There's not a ton of customization. You can change like the location and the size and the opacity, but it's fairly straightforward, and it just kind of improves the kind of poor default Blizzard UI. The last combat-focused add-on I'm going to go over is a very simple one, and it's just a combat timing add-on. This used to be really easily trackable through weak auras, we have to use an add-on now. So I use this one called Klikker's Combat Timer. Very simple, very lightweight, does exactly what you'd expect it to do. Just tracks your time in combat. You change like the font and the location, stuff like that, but all in all, very lightweight and simple. Alright, so that's it for combat add-ons. Now I'll just move into more like quality of life and general UI add-ons, starting with this one called KeystoneLoot, and you just pull this one up by typing /KSL. This one's super nice because it's basically like a loot wish list, so you can do this for both raid and dungeons. I have everything filtered by like my favorites and things that I want or need still. You can show like the full loot list here from every dungeon and from every raid boss, or you can just filter it by favorites. So super handy, super nice, especially for alts. And next up we have an add-on called mythicplus utility. I get some questions on this one too while I'm streaming and doing keys and stuff. You open this one up by typing /MPU, and then I will toggle the window here. So this is what it looks like. And it's basically whenever you zone in to a keystone, depending on the dungeon, it's going to, one, it's a nice reminder to check your talents, make sure you're in a Mythic Plus spec, and then it also tries to recommend the best talents to take. So if you have any choice nodes or recommended things to take. So an example here is for Windrunner Spire. Since I'm a shaman, I can take Cleanse Spirit that removes a curse from the duo boss, so it's helpful with that one. You can also take Cleansing Totem, helpful with the poisons and stuff throughout the trash bowls. Always good to have a purge just in case. Tremor is kind of situational, or if you're pugging or with a group you trust, you might not need it for the second to last boss, but just tries to help make meaningful choices and stuff that are more impactful to your group, because shaman specifically, we do have a number of impactful choice nodes. So like I mentioned, the poison cleansing or the tremor totem, things like earth grab you can sometimes get rid of. So kind of depends, but it's a nice checker, nice quality of life thing. Another nice quality of life add-on that I like to use is called Simple Item Level, and this one basically just puts a item level on top of each like piece of gear's icon, and then it also shows, if you can see like just to the left of my cursor's pointer, that little like blue gem, and that is to show that your piece is enchanted and or gemmed. It's a really nice thing just to help you remember to make sure everything's enchanted and gemmed. If it's missing anything, it'll show like an X, like a little orange thing or red thing here if you were missing a gem or missing an enchant. And it's nice also just for if you do like transmog runs or run old content. It's nice to be able to like quickly glance at all the gear in your bags to know what's like low eye level and what's safe to sell or disenchant. Even if you have like multiple gear sets, if you like to multi-spec, sometimes nice to help kind of just like quickly look through your gear, through your bags and stuff. Then another nice quality of life one that I like to use, because I like to play a lot of alts, is it's called Syndicator, and it there's not much you do with this one either. It's just tracks all of your alts currencies. So when you install it, you then have to log into every character that you care about or want to track currencies on. But as you can see in the little tooltip there, you can see I have multiple characters. So that's pretty much it for the add-ons that are impactful to my gameplay and quality of life. Another thing I'll just add at the end is I would always recommend getting these two add-ons as a pair called BugGrabber and BugSack. These essentially are just like error grabbers and loggers for any add-on and LUA errors you get with your UI. They basically just run quietly in the background. They're very low impact. but they will catch things if you ever do have errors. And then you can have at least like some sort of idea on what's causing it, even if you're not super knowledgeable or familiar with add-ons or like LUA, or coding languages or anything. It'll at least give you like an idea of which add-ons are causing the issue, so you can try and troubleshoot or turn them off or reinstall them. So a quick example of the BugSack and BugGrabber is, I'm sure everyone's probably seen something like this at least once in their WoW life. This is what BugGrabber and BugSack aim to like catch and log, and then also hide, so this stuff doesn't pop up while you're playing. So I'll show you here is when you install it, it just pops up on the mini map here. I would just make sure you uncheck auto pop up and then mute it, or else it's gonna make a little annoying sound. But I will caveat that with, if you are running into any issues, it is a good idea to have the auto pop up and to unmute it to make sure you can hear this, so you know when certain things are happening if you care and want to troubleshoot. Okay, so that about wraps up this UI and add-on guide. Hopefully this was helpful. This is the first time I've done like a long form content video like this, so there's probably a lot of yapping. So feel free to leave any feedback, positive or negative, if you like this style of video, if this was helpful, if you have any questions on anything. Like I said, I'll put all of the links, codes, and things in the description for easy access. So thanks for watching. See you in the next one.